Hey, Bobby Manning here. Welcome to the Garden Report, CLNS Media, Celtics All Access. Welcoming back Josue Pavon. Been a minute since we've done one of these.
I know. It feels good. Good to be back.
Fun game, back and forth, right down the wire. Pacers never stopped pushing, shot 47% from three. Another onslaught from Tyrese Halliburton, who started this game 10 of 11 from the field in all 6 3-point attempts. He ends up fouling out late. Jayson Tatum peppers Indiana with shots throughout that second half. Jaylen Brown hits a big late shot. They both get to 30. 32 for Brown, 31 for Tatum. 6th time they've done that since the start of March, and a great combined effort on offense as Indy kept pushing. I mean, this never got any bigger than 7, I believe, through that second half. A ton of offense from the Pacers, just like the last time these two teams played. So concerns on the defensive end for the Celtics without Rob, but with a new starting lineup tonight, Daniel Theis getting inserted. Offense looked really good.
We got our wish. We got Daniel Theis starting lineup, which is something we talked about 2 nights ago, and he definitely played it well in terms of anchoring that defense down low. But I think the headline of this one is how the Celtics did in that fourth quarter. I mean, they just looked different than the team we saw against the Miami Heat, the team that couldn't score in the final 4 minutes and 20 seconds of that matchup when obviously they really needed a bucket. The same team that got trapped into that zone, survived it, but still sort of had those mental collapse down the stretch when they really couldn't come up with buckets. But this time they were much more aggressive, I felt like, against the Indiana Pacers, but also they were more involved with everyone. You know what I mean? Like, I felt like Tatum and Brown sort of playing off of each other. I felt like Tatum was trying to get Brown back into the fold because he scored 19 first half points, and we talked about this during the post-game show, Bobby, where we've seen games like this where he sort of shies away in that fourth quarter after having a huge first half or after putting up 20 plus points after the first 3 quarters, and then he puts up like a dud in the fourth quarter. That wasn't the case in this one. I thought him and Tatum, of course, continued to play well, continue to complement each other. But against a team like this, when you have Halliburton, who fouled out with 10 minutes left to go in the fourth quarter, like, this is supposed to happen. Like, the fact that they were able to do this 6 times out of 8 all season, and all 6 of those times happened in March, like, obviously that's telling of them turning the corner, but it's also telling of how easy this can happen, And I'm not saying that like every single time this happens, it's an automatic win, but most times it is.
The chemistry's good. Brown's finding his sweet spot. Last 8 games, close to 30 points a game now. In fact, I think he's reached that threshold with the 32 here. He's been incredible, and he's finding his role, which I was worried he wasn't going to be able to find with this group, with the turnover issues he was having. Still a lot in this game, but the aggressiveness and the amount of playmakers around him bodes well for him being able to shoot close to the basket, where he's just dynamic. I mean, that half-court pass from Smart to him early, acrobatic layup, he was just electric here. And timely shots, too, for him and Tatum in that second half. We'll keep it on the positive because there's certainly some negative to get to here, but Daniel Theis, we wanted that adjustment. It became very popular around the media into the day that followed, and makes sense. Daniel Theis replacing Robert Williams in the starting lineup. Unclear if that's going to be what they stick with, but they should. He gives a dynamic element to the offense with the rolling. The screening's excellent. He still has that steal that gets Tatum going. We saw it on Wednesday. So there's a lot of stuff he brings, and he can hit a 3 here or there, too. And he's very comfortable playing with these guys. He said at shoot-around that effectively the only guy he hasn't played with here is Derrick White, and they connected well in this one too. So immediate results to Theis getting out there.
Yeah, but we know he's a locker room guy. We know how popular he is, how happy he was to be back, and he knows that his numbers are being called right now. Obviously, with Rob, Rob's unavailable, and you talk about some of the better playmakers that the Celtics had, or at least the ones that we saw on full display against the Pacers. I thought you could put Al Horford right in that mix.
He was excellent too.
He was phenomenal. To take your word, he was phenomenal, Bobby.
Are you now? Is that an endorsement in the March Madness?
It's an endorsement, and it's also a word I'm going to drop when it's really necessary. And I think this is the case because, look, Al knows that he's obviously going to have to step up a bit, but he knows that he's not alone in this, right? Like, having Daniel Theis out there, someone who can spread the floor offensively, I mean, the confidence he has in shooting the ball is at a point I've never seen before. And that's huge. And, of course, what he does on the defensive end, being able to, switch off of guys, guard the perimeter. Grant Williams gave you a little bit of that as well. He got one of those block/steals at the top of the key behind the 3-point arc. I mean, you want to see that effort, night in and night out. We see that from markets all the time, but we're starting to see it more and more throughout that front court. And without Rob out there, you see them sort of taking it up a notch. I think that's what we saw against the Pacers.
And this is why I still feel good about this team winning a first-round series, depending on who it ends up being against. There's a wide variety of opponents, obviously, that they could end up with there. But you have depth at that big man spot. Even in a game like this where Horford fouls 5 times, Theis runs into some foul trouble. I think he ended up with 4. You have Grant to mix in there. He finished some big cutting layups in that second half. I think he finished 3 of 5 from the field there. there.
Right?
Yeah.
He was a little cold before that.
So he ends up fitting in well on that bench unit, and that's where he's comfortable.
Yeah.
I think Theis, you have that nice complement of defense in Al's case, and he had a great offensive game tonight too. And offense in Theis's case, he can just do so many things on that end. So those two are going to work together. We got to see a little bit more, but the problem for this group right now is the defense. I mean, you get lit up here by a pretty scrapped together Indiana lineup. Tyrese Halliburton went down pretty early in that second half with the foul trouble, so you didn't even see much of him, and he lit them up when he was out there. And the switching right now is just a mess, and that's stuff that, yeah, Rob's part of it, I'm sure, but there's not a great focus with this team this week, and when it comes to attention for detail, and they all talked about that after the game. They're not concerned. I think as these guys start to play together a little bit more, they'll hammer some of that stuff down, but I don't feel like they have their identity defensively right now, and with 4 games left, that's a real concern.
Yeah, they look a little different. That's true. I'll give you that. They're a little different on the defensive side, but I don't think it's like what we saw in November, right? I feel like there's still that attitude. There's still that effort, which is something that we used to hammer these guys about not putting up out there. So
it's not an effort thing. It's just the details. I feel like.
That's true. And then you haven't somewhat enough time to sort of iron those issues out, because obviously Rob is a big hole that makes up for all those defensive stops and also leads to them scoring on the opposite end. But I tell you this much, Bobby, seeing what Derrick White did today, like, I love the fact that he's efficient. You would want to see more of that, consistently, or you would love to see him also have those games where he goes off for 20, like he did in his debut, and he's done, a couple times throughout his brief stint in Boston. Because I just feel like this second unit, they have to rely on someone, or at least a couple of guys to give you that. We love what Daniel Theis brings. I love what Grant Williams brings, but sometimes that kind of goes away, specifically with Grant. And then with someone like Daniel Theis, I mean, he's going to need help as well. So you want to see the second unit develop. You want to see them at least be able to have the kind of defensive intensity, or at least that confidence that can hold the fort while the starters are resting. And I honestly think Al is going to be a part of that. I don't want Al playing anywhere near 40 minutes now. Don't get me wrong, but I would like to see him sort of mixed in with that second unit, specifically with Grant. I think those two play well off of each other on both ends of the floor, just to sort of keep the flow going and not have the offense go so stagnant when those guys are both on the bench.
Yeah, lots to nitpick from this game, especially against an opponent like Indiana, but some real positives out of this one. I hope they stick with Theis. The White thing's huge. They need him playing well, and he had the essentially icing bucket down the stretch there. So Celtics score a good win, a needed one. A couple games from clinching home court advantage in the first round, which is important. It's tough to shake out what it's going to be 1 through 4, but Washington, another chance to pick up a win on Sunday. We'll see who's out there, how Ime decides to balance the rest thing. Still hasn't been determined based on some seeding things that need to be sorted out here, but it is the final home game. We'll be here to cover it before a Chicago-Milwaukee road trip that we'll have live coverage of as well here at CLNS Media.
What else too? We're going to celebrate Bobby's birthday afterwards, man. I'm taking him out after the game. So last game of the regular season, gonna let our hair down a little bit and gear up for the playoffs. Well, I guess we got 3 games and then the playoffs, but you know what I mean.
1 o'clock tip, 3:30 post game. We'll see you there. Celtics All Access, CLNSmedia.com. For Josue Pavon, I'm Bobby Manning. Celtics beat the Pacers back here on Sunday afternoon. We'll see you then.